Congratulations, you finally have a haircut that matches your age. The note was pinned to my pillow when I jolted awake on my son's wedding day. I reached up smooth skin. My scalp burned, the sharp smell of antiseptic still hanging there. I didn't scream. I opened the safe, pulled out the envelope for a planned transfer of $22 million, and changed the game. I froze in front of the mirror in the marble-tiled bathroom. The woman staring back wasn't Beatrice Langford, the real estate CEO who built dozens of high-rises in Boston. She was someone humiliated to the core. The thick silver hair I'd cared for so carefully, my pride, was gone. All that remained was a slick, burning red, icy scalp. Tears surged, but I forced them back down. They wanted me to fall apart. They wanted me to disappear on the day I should have stood tall as the groom's mother. No, I wasn't giving Sabrina that victory. On the oak nightstand, I saw an ivory envelope with neat blue ink, so carefully written it looked fake. "Have a great day at my wedding." A crude heart at the end. The paper still carried an expensive perfume, the same scent I'd smelled 100 times on my future daughter-in-law. I didn't need to guess who did it. I took a long breath, trembling but clearer than ever. The bedroom safe was still open from last night, where I'd carefully placed the envelope holding the paperwork to transfer $22 million to Michael and Sabrina. That was the wedding gift I'd spent weeks preparing, believing it would be the final bridge to keep my son close. Now, when my fingers touched that envelope, it felt different. The paper wasn't smooth anymore. It was sharp like a blade, cutting into my palm. I gripped it, then set it back in the safe, turned the dial, and listened to the dry metal click. The decision was made. That gift was never leaving this safe. I called Avery Whitman, our longtime family attorney. He picked up after 2 rings. "Beatrice? Ready to sign off on the transfer? I've prepped everything you asked." I kept my voice steady. "Avery, put it on hold. Not a single dollar moves. And tonight, after the reception, I want you at my house. We're rewriting the entire will." Silence on the other end for a moment. "Is something wrong?" I closed my eyes. "Just one thing," I said. I finally woke up. I set the phone down and walked to the closet. I was still shaking, but a small flame had caught in my chest. Sabrina might have shaved my head, but she couldn't strip away the pride and will I'd honed for decades. I pulled a navy silk dress off the hanger, the one I bought myself for my birthday after closing a 30-story tower deal in downtown Boston. I smoothed the cool fabric and remembered that feeling of victory. I knew I'd need it today, not just as a dress, but as armor. The landline rang. I jumped. Not Michael, not Sabrina. It was Lucia, my hairstylist of over 20 years. My throat tightened, but I kept even. "Lucia, I need you right now. Bring the best wig you have. No one can know." She didn't pry. She only whispered, "I'll be there in 20 minutes." While I waited, I sat in the armchair by the window and looked out at the yard under the first snow. White flakes drifted down, covering every branch, every red brick path I'd walked thousands of times. Memories crashed in. The day I became a widow at 32. The night I buried my husband with 12-year-old Michael asleep in my arms, and I swore he would never know fear or hunger. I kept that vow for 3 decades. I worked without stopping. Dawn runs from job sites to the office, late nights reading contracts until my eyes blurred. The first apartments, then a commercial building, then a mall, every brick, every contract tied to my blood, sweat, and sleepless nights. And now, all of it stood to fall into the hands of a woman who saw me as disposable. The doorbell rang. I let Lucia in. She carried a long black box. When she saw my head, she covered her mouth. "Oh my God, Beatrice." I cut off her pity with a tight smile. "Don't ask. Just help me stand tall in front of people today." It took nearly an hour to fit a soft gray-silver wig that looked and moved like real hair. When Lucia held up the mirror, I shivered. The woman in the glass was no longer the wreck from the morning. She had the cool poise and razor gaze my counterparts in business used to respect. I recognized her Beatrice Langford, the woman who never accepted defeat. I thanked Lucia, slipped a thick envelope into her hand, and walked her out. Alone again, I opened my purse and carefully tucked in a small voice recorder. My instincts told me that today, words without proof would save no one. The clock read 10 a.m., 3 hours until the ceremony at St. Andrew's Church, one of the city's oldest. I closed my eyes and drew a deep breath. The battle started this morning the second my hand touched that bare scalp. But the ending, that would be mine to decide. I grabbed a gray wool coat and a cashmere scarf Michael gave me 10 years ago. That memory now felt like a dull knife scratching, not bleeding. I told myself, "Son, today I'll show you just how badly you misjudged your mother." When I stepped outside, Boston's cold wind slapped my face, but I didn't flinch. I pulled the collar up, adjusted the wig, and got into the car. My driver glanced at me in the rear view, ready to speak. I shook my head. I needed silence. I needed to feed the fire that had just been lit. On the way to the church, I watched people through the window, couples holding hands, families guiding small children across the street. I wondered how many of them had been betrayed by the very people they trusted most, how many had been forced to choose between love and self-respect. I knew today I wasn't fighting only for myself, but for the countless mothers used by their own children, with motherhood thrown back at them as a demand. The car stopped at the church gates. I pressed a hand to my chest and felt a strange calm, not trembling, strength rising. The strength of truth, of a woman pushed to the edge who refused to break. I opened the door, stepped out, and smiled. That smile wasn't for the crowd, or for Michael or Sabrina. It was for me, Beatrice Langford, who woke up on the most important morning of her life with a shaved head and a heart more awake than ever. I sat on the cold pew, looking up at the stained glass flickering with light, and memories rolled in. While the staff rushed flowers and candles into place, my mind slipped back to where it all began: love, loss, and the grit to build a life from nothing. I remember the day it all changed at 32. They handed me my husband Richard's death certificate, sudden heart attack on the highway. I was stunned. One minute we were talking about expanding our little office, the next I was frozen in a hospital corridor, palms over my face, hearing my 12-year-old ask, "Mom, where's Dad?" I had no answer. I pulled Michael in, held him, and silently swore he would never lack for anything. We went back to our small house outside Boston. That night I sat in an old armchair for hours, watched Michael asleep on the sofa, his young face still streaked with tears. In the dark, I understood. From now on, the weight was mine. No Richard to split bills, no shoulder to lean on. Just me and a boy who didn't yet know how to knot a tie for his school uniform. The next morning, as the sun lifted over the horizon, I put on a thin sweater, tied my hair back, and started my new job, widowed mother turned accidental businesswoman. I had no capital, no specialized knowledge, but I had one thing I knew: I had to survive. I learned to read financial statements like a foreign language, spent hours at the public library studying real estate, land use, property management. At first the numbers spun in my head, but page by page, hope-open knowledge would be the sharp knife protecting us from poverty. Those first years were brutal. I worked from 5 a.m. until late at night. Days knocking on doors of tired old houses, pitching low-cost brokerage work. Nights bent over notes, learning market analysis, price comps, cold-calling leads. Some nights I cried after another rejection, then got up at dawn to make Michael breakfast and drive him to school. I went hungry many days to save for his new math books. When he asked, "Mom, why aren't you eating with me?" I smiled. "I already ate. You go ahead." He believed me, and I doubled down. I wanted him to grow up feeling secure, not like me as a child, digging through empty cupboards for the last stale roll. 3 years later, I bought my first duplex. I remember signing the papers, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold the pen. When I put the pen down, a new door opened. From there, it was brick by brick, unit by unit, building by building. The Langford real estate footprint started with freezing morning walks to a broker's office, hoarse throat calls, and nights lit by a desk lamp over burning eyes. Michael was different. He saw results, not the process. At 18, he was used to a new car, tuition paid, never thinking about the price of a shirt. I'd raised him like a prince and forgot to teach the prince how to wield a sword. On his college graduation day, I watched him stride across the stage, robe billowing. I thought I'd done it, turned a fatherless boy into a successful man. But deep in his eyes, I saw something familiar, not gratitude, entitlement. At 25, he came to me, calm as could be. "Mom, I want my own condo. You'll cover the down payment, right?" I nodded, wrote the check, asked no questions. Not the first ask and not the last. At 30, he brought Sabrina home and said flatly, "We want to do Europe nice and luxe. You'll take care of it, right?" Not a request, an order with a smile. I'd spoiled my son. I thought I was making up for losing his father too soon. In truth, I was teaching him to treat a mother's love like an endless bank. I realized too late, then Sabrina arrived and made it worse. From day one, I felt the chill in her eyes. Smooth talker, good at charming a room with travel stories, fashion, career plans. But when she looked at me, it was scrutiny. No interest in the woman who'd raised Michael. I let it slide, telling myself time would soften things. Instead, I was pushed to the margins. At family dinners, she tossed light jabs. "Mrs. Langford, don't you think that color ages you? Maybe try something fresher." Michael just laughed, nodding along like a shadow. I sat there with my salad, forcing a smile to keep the table from turning into a battlefield. Each time, another scar etched into my heart. I kept handing over money and kept my mouth shut because I was afraid of one thing: losing my son. I believed that if I was more generous, if I gave them more, maybe Michael would remember a mother's love. That's why I prepared the massive wedding gift, $22 million. To me, it was the last key, the hope of keeping me connected to Michael and helping Sabrina see I wasn't an obstacle but an ally. But this morning shattered that illusion. The shaved hair, the mocking note, everything hit like a slap that woke me up. Suddenly I could see clearly. For years I'd traded my health, youth, and self-respect to hold on to a bond that was already rotten. Sitting in the church, listening to the choir rehearse, I lightly touched the wig on my head. It was soft, hiding an ugly truth, but underneath I knew my scalp still burned. That wound was my life in miniature. A shiny surface of success with tears inside left by the people I loved most. I drew a deep breath. Only one question remained. Would I let them keep defining my worth, or would I stand up and define myself? I stayed on the dark wooden pew a moment longer, gripping an old hymnal. The chill of Street Andrews seeped through every crack, into my skin, making me shiver. On the main altar, helpers were lighting candles, their gold glow trembling up the high-arched ceiling. Everything looked beautiful, solemn, just as Sabrina wanted. But to me, that reverence was only the backdrop for a carefully staged farce. I stood and stepped into the side hall. My heels clicked softly on the stone, blending with the bridesmaids' whispers ahead. I meant to step outside for air, but then I froze. In the quiet, a familiar voice came low and urgent. It was Michael. I pressed against a large stone column carved with classical patterns, forcing my breathing to slow. My son's voice carried in a hushed echo, each word slicing the space. "Tessa, no, don't show up here now. I told you. Just wait until after the ceremony." That name stabbed my chest. Tessa Park. I'd seen her many times at Michael's office, the young secretary with quick eyes and a bright smile. I used to think she was just a dedicated assistant. Now everything was clear as day. Michael went on, voice dropping to a whisper into the phone. After I get that money from my mother, everything will change. We won't have to hide anymore, won't have to sneak around. Just be patient a little longer." I let the hymnal fall to my lap, my hands shaking hard. Each word hit my ears like a cold blade. That money, he meant, was the wedding gift I'd planned? $22 million, the work of my lifetime, suddenly turned into a ticket for my son to run off with his mistress while he was still about to marry Sabrina. I tilted my head, heart pounding. Michael's voice came again, heavier. "You know how my mother Island, she always wants to please me, always afraid I'll go without. As soon as she signs this afternoon, we'll have it all. A fresh start, freedom, no strings." I bit my lip to keep from making a sound. My son, the boy who once cried into a pillow for his mother, now saw me as a wallet. He wasn't just betraying me, he was betraying his own wedding, turning those vows into a joke. In that moment, I heard footsteps rush through the hall. Michael lowered his voice. "I have to go. Keep it quiet. After the honeymoon, I'll take care of everything. Tessa, trust me." Then the call cut off, leaving a thick silence. I slipped back into the shadows, pretending to study a flower arrangement in the corner. A few staffers hurried by, paying me no mind. Michael stepped out from behind the column, straightened his jacket, a flicker of strain crossing his face before he smiled, the smile everyone expects from a happy groom. But I had seen, and I had heard. I returned to the pew and sat like a dutiful churchgoer. In my purse, the tiny recorder glowed red, quietly storing every lie Michael had said. My chest ached, but something inside had hardened. I no longer clung to the fantasy that money would mend a mother-son bond. I knew I'd just gotten my first piece of evidence, the weapon to keep me from the trap my son and daughter-in-law were setting. I closed my eyes and steadied my breath. The organ swelled in rehearsal, urgent and then lingering. People would see me this morning as a proud mother waiting for her son to walk the aisle. But only I knew that, from the moment I heard that call, my heart had shifted from hurt to resolve. When I opened my eyes, colored light from the stained glass fell across my hands in bands of green, red, purple, and gold. I stared at it and thought, maybe God is showing me the way, not the road of tears, but of truth. I tightened my grip on the purse where the warm evidence rested. And I promised myself, when the moment comes, I won't tremble like I did in the mirror this morning. I will be Beatrice Langford, the woman who isn't afraid and who is ready to expose everything. I stayed on the pew, working my breath back into rhythm after what I'd just overheard. A cold, metallic ringing kept sounding inside me, a warning that the truth wasn't done. I knew Michael had another woman, knew he was only waiting for the money to leave Sabrina. But in my bones, I felt Sabrina wasn't innocent either. She'd never bothered to hide that condescending look she saved just for me. I wanted to know what she truly thought, wanted to see my future daughter-in-law's real face, not the glossy one she wore. I rose and slipped down the corridor toward the bridal prep room. The polished marble floor reflected my steps. At the far end, the door sat half open, white light spilling out along with bouncy music and the sharp laughter of several women. I stopped just outside, heart racing, but my feet refused to move away. Through the crack, Sabrina's voice rang out, clear as day high, confident, brimming with triumph. "You know what? In just a few hours I'll have the entire fortune in my hands. $22 million, and by law I get half." Michael's so naive he has no idea. Laughter broke out. I went rigid. My fingers dug into the doorframe, my palms ice cold. Sabrina kept going, lower now but edged with malice. "And after that, I'm filing for divorce. I've already contacted an attorney. I don't need to stay with Michael forever. With that money, I can start fresh, freer, and more comfortable." A bridesmaid giggled. "What about the mother-in-law? She's a handful, acts like the house is hers." Sabrina dropped her voice, cold as ice. "Don't worry. Once the money's in, I'll push Michael to put her in a high-end nursing home. Park her there, let someone else handle her." Once she's out of the house and the company, she won't have a say in anything." The room burst into shrill laughter, crisp as blades slicing my skin. I shook all over, but not from fear. It was anger rising from the marrow, a firestorm burning away the weakness of my morning. I stood there, frozen, until I realized I was crushing the recorder in my purse. The red light kept blinking, faithfully catching every word, every bitter laugh. I closed my eyes for a second and knew I'd just gripped a double-edged knife. One edge to protect, the other to strike back. I eased away without a sound. My heart hammered like it would explode, but my steps held steady. I knew if I stayed 1 minute longer, I'd charge in and scream in Sabrina's face. I didn't. Life had taught me enough. Big battles aren't won by hot anger, but by patience and planning. Back in the main sanctuary, no one noticed I'd been gone. Guests were gathering. Chatter filled the air. I smiled and greeted them, burying the storm twisting inside me. In the colored glass, I caught my reflection, a silver-haired woman in a navy dress, deep red lipstick. No one knew that only a few steps away I'd just heard my future daughter-in-law call me an old woman who needs to be locked away. I sat, hands loosely folded. Inside my purse, the recording had become a living piece of proof. I pictured it playing for the crowd, Sabrina's smug laughter echoing, her face going pale as she realized everything was out. The thought gave me an odd, cooling calm. Sabrina wanted me erased, tucked away in some distant nursing home. Michael wanted to drain the money and run with his lover. Both thought I was weak, old, easily beaten. But that contempt gave me strength. I would turn their trap into my launch pad. In that instant, I knew the morning's humiliation had become a pivot point. From the shaved scalp, the spiteful note, the false vows I overheard behind the column, to the vicious laughter in the bridal room, together they formed an indictment I didn't need to add a single word to. All I had to do was wait for the right moment. I drew a deep breath and looked toward the altar. Candlelight washed the Virgin's face. Quietly, I told myself, "They think I've lost. I have no idea I've just begun." I straightened my shawl, sat tall, and let a gentle smile return. Anyone passing by would see only a kind, proud mother of the groom on a big day. But I knew, behind that smile, a double-edged blade was ready, and when I drew it, none of them would see it coming. The church bells pealed, each round rolling through the space like a familiar refrain. Guests took their seats. White-draped pews were dotted with deep red roses. I sat in the front row on the groom's side, fingers lightly holding the small clutch on my lap. All eyes turned to the back, where Sabrina was about to enter on her father's arm. The big doors opened. She appeared in a white French lace gown, the train nearly touching the steps. Murmurs and gasps spread, camera flashes popped. Sabrina beamed, gliding forward like the heroine in a fairy tale. I watched her and couldn't help recalling the cruel words from the dressing room minutes ago. Behind that shimmer was a calculating heart, and I was the only one here who knew it. Michael waited at the end of the aisle, sharp in a black tuxedo with a crisp white tie. His smile beamed, but to me it was only a mask. I heard his whisper on the phone in my head, "After I get that money from my mother, everything will change." The image of the boy who once gripped my hand, shaky on toddler legs, was gone. In front of me stood a man who'd sold off both conscience and kinship. The ceremony began. The priest's opening words were steady and solemn, echoing under the high vault. I tried to focus, but every "marriage is a sacred union" landed like a taunt. I glanced around, teary eyes, tender smiles, people sure they were witnessing true love. Only I knew they were watching a carefully staged production. When it came time for the vows, Michael turned to Sabrina, his voice low and steady. "I promise to love you, respect you, share every joy and sorrow with you, and be by your side for life." I bit my lip and listened. every word carved into the morning's memory like a blade. He promised fidelity, yet just hours earlier he'd been whispering to another woman. He promised a future together, while planning in his head to leave his wife once he got the money. Then it was Sabrina's turn. She lifted her face, eyes shining as if full of love. "I promise to stand by you, care for you, face every challenge together, and keep this love forever." I almost laughed. Her vows were pretty as a poem, but in my head I still heard the chill of her words, "I'll file for divorce." After that, the mother-in-law goes to a nursing home. That scheming tone and her glowing face were so opposite it made my skin crawl. When the priest asked, "Does anyone object to this marriage?" For a second I wanted to stand and shout that the whole ceremony was a lie, but I clenched my hands and held back. Not yet. The trap I'd set needed time, and that big audience was exactly the witness I wanted when the truth came out. I took a deep breath and gave a faint smile, the kind a mother would wear on a big day. Finally, the bells rang bright, and the priest declared them husband and wife. Michael leaned down to kiss Sabrina, and the church burst into applause. I clapped too slow, firm, smiling the whole time. On the outside, I looked like any proud mother. Inside, every round of applause only confirmed it. Everything I'd just seen was an empty show. As the couple turned to walk out to the cheerful music, I rose and followed, my eyes on the white train and the glossy tuxedo. They thought they'd already won, that I was just a mother pushed aside. But I knew this. The more perfect this ceremony looked, the harder their fall would be. I brushed my hand over my purse, where the recorder was safe. The evidence was enough to expose it all. I pictured Michael's face when he realized he'd been found out, Sabrina's panic when she heard her own voice ring out before a crowd. A strange calm settled over me. People poured out of the church toward the lavishly decorated reception hall. White flowers stretched everywhere. Champagne sparkled. Music pulsed. Guests laughed, toasted, raised their glasses. I moved among them, composed, smiling as I greeted familiar faces. No one saw that behind my calm mask, I was holding a storm ready to break. In my head, every step was set. I'd wait until the room drew together, until everyone lifted their glasses to listen to me speak. Then the lies would be dragged into the light, and no one could deny them. I took my seat at the front table under warm golden lights and quietly watched Michael and Sabrina sit side by side, holding hands, smiling at guests. It moved many people. To me, it was just makeup and masks covering rot. I breathed in, slow and deep, and told myself, let them enjoy their last moments of glory. After that, the stage is mine. The music softened, and the murmur of conversation faded. The chandelier lights pooled into a bright circle over the head table where Michael and Sabrina Saturday. My son grinned wide, his face flushed from wine and self-satisfaction. Sabrina matched him, glowing like a bride who had just grabbed her dream. The MC gently announced, "And now please welcome Beatrice, the groom's mother, to share a few words on this special day." Heads turned, expectant eyes landed on me. My heart tightened for a beat, then steadied. This was the moment I'd prepared for since I walked into the ceremony. I stood and slowly lifted a glass of champagne. Chairs scraped, toasts hushed. All eyes rose. I smiled the smile of a proud mother while the storm gathered. First, thank you all for being here to celebrate with our family. For me, this moment is sacred, because I get to see my son step into a new chapter of his life. Applause rippled. I paused, took a small sip, set the glass down. My voice dropped, slow but clear. For 33 years, I've lived by a promise. Since my husband passed, I swore I would protect Michael with everything I had, give my son a full life, and never let him face the want I once knew. A few soft ohs rose from nearby tables. Some older guests nodded, warm-eyed. I let it sit, then continued, "And today, I planned to give my son and his new wife a wedding gift, a substantial one. $22 million, the savings of my lifetime, the result of decades of work. The room stirred. I heard the surprised murmurs, a few gasps. Michael squeezed Sabrina's hand, his face tightening slightly as he forced a smile. Sabrina's eyes lit, her lips curled. I drew a deep breath, lifted my head, and shifted tone. But there's something life has taught me. Not every sacrifice is valued, and not everyone deserves the gift you give. The air dipped. Curious looks turned toward me. Michael leaned forward, ready to speak, but I raised a hand to stop him. I pulled a small recorder from my purse and set it on the table. The red light blinked on. Before I decide, I think everyone should hear a few truths. Silence fell. I pressed play. Michael's voice filled the quiet. After I get that money from my mother, everything will change. We won't have to hide anymore. Just be patient a little longer. The audio was so clear, a few mouths fell open. Michael blanched and cut in. Mom, this is a misunderstanding. I looked him straight in the eye, calm but firm. A misunderstanding? Then where did these words come from? Whose mouth, Michael? Noise rose. Guests whispered. Sabrina looked at her husband, eyes wide with alarm, then tried to cover with a stiff smile. I didn't give them time. I hit the next clip. You know how my mother island. She always wants to please me. As soon as she signs this afternoon, we'll have everything. A fresh start, freedom, no strings. When it ended, the room erupted like a kicked beehive. Michael stammered, sprang up. It was just a joke. Don't take it the wrong way. I narrowed my eyes, cutting through him. A joke? Joking about betraying a marriage? Joking about treating your mother like a wallet? Michael went silent, sweat beading on his forehead. Sabrina tried to hold his hand. His hand shook. I turned, fixing my gaze on her. And Sabrina, you have something to explain too. I pulled a small note from my purse, the nasty line I found on my pillow that morning. Congratulations, you finally have a haircut that matches your age. Enjoy my wedding. I held it up for the nearest tables to see. You plan to erase me from this celebration by shaving my head in my sleep? A cheap, degrading stunt? Sabrina shot up, face flaming. That's not mine. You're making this up. I smiled. Cool. Really? Then why did you brag in the bridal room at noon that you'd divorce in a few months and take half the money? I heard everything. And I have witnesses if needed. The room froze. Some guests glanced at each other. Others whispered into their phones, clearly recording. Sabrina's face went white, her lips trembling without sound. I let the silence stretch, then slowly raised my glass. So, I'm canceling the $22 million gift. Neither of you deserves a penny of the money I earned with blood and tears. Conversation crashed like a wave. Michael collapsed into his chair, head down, hand over his face. Sabrina stood rigid, shaking. I ended in a level voice that carried, "The greatest wedding gift I can give today is the truth. And the truth is this: greed and betrayal never win." I set the glass down and turned to leave. Chairs scraped, voices rose, a few "oh my gods" rang out behind me. But my steps were light and steady. I was no longer the woman trembling in the mirror this morning. I was the one who stripped the masks off my son and daughter-in-law in front of everyone. In that moment, I knew I'd taken back control. And the game, from here on out, had only just begun. I left the hall with my back straight, neither rushing nor hesitating. Each step tapped evenly on the tile, like a reminder that the weight had lifted from my shoulders. Behind me, chaos still rolled, chairs dragged, people calling out the sounds of a wedding turned storm. I had just reached the grand lobby when I heard hurried footsteps. Michael rushed up and grabbed my arm. The handsome groom's polish was gone, replaced by panic and bloodshot eyes. "Mom, please, don't do this." You misunderstood. It was all just. I turned and met his eyes, the eyes that once made me proud, now filled with desperation. I pulled my arm free, my voice low and firm. "I've heard enough, Michael. There's no misunderstanding." He stammered for an excuse. I only said that to test her." "I never meant—" "Enough!" I cut him off, my voice ringing through the wide lobby. "Don't turn betrayal into a joke. I gave my whole life for you, and this is how you repay me?" Michael froze, his mouth working but no words coming out. His face twisted for a moment, anger and despair tangled together. Then, as if giving up, he dropped to his knees, hands clutching his head, and whispered, I was wrong." I didn't answer. I gave him one look and turned away. Right then, Sabrina burst out of the hall, her puffed wedding dress slowing her down, but she still lunged forward. Her face had gone pale, her makeup starting to smear, crimson lips trembling. She shrieked, voice shrill, "You made that up! You ruined my wedding!" Her scream drew a few curious guests outside. I stood calmly, watching her snarl like a cornered animal. "Ruined it?" I curled a cold smile. "I only told the truth. You should thank me for showing everyone your real face sooner." Sabrina lunged, trying to snatch the paper from my hand, but an older male guest held her back just in time. His voice was hard. "Sabrina, calm down. We all heard it. How are you going to deny it?" She broke down, sobbing, mascara streaking her cheeks, all her earlier haughtiness gone. In the chaos, I saw her parents step outside too. They didn't go to their daughter. They stood frozen at the door, eyes full of disappointment. Her father lowered his head, and her mother kept shaking hers, as if witnessing the worst humiliation of their lives. By then, Michael had gotten up, gaunt and sharp-faced, and snapped at Sabrina. "You betrayed me too?" She turned back, choking up. I just wanted a better future. Her weak excuses sank under the guests' angry whispers. Some shook their heads, others walked off without a backward glance. I looked at the two of them, and a feeling I couldn't name rose in me, not joy, not gloating, just relief that the truth was finally out. I took a few more steps toward the exit. But behind me, Michael ran after me again, this time his voice not frantic but desperate. "Mom, please don't abandon me. I know I was wrong. Please give me one more chance. I'll change." I stopped, turned my back to him so he couldn't see the tears on my cheeks. Then I answered, slow but firm, "Michael, I've given you chances your whole life. You chose to throw them all away. Now you have to live with the consequences." I didn't wait for his reply. I kept walking, leaving behind the choking sobs of my only son. Outside the hall, the decorated cars still lined up, flowers still bright, but no one wanted photos anymore. Guests drifted off, the air heavy like smoke clinging to the walls. I could feel it, this dream wedding had collapsed in just a few minutes. An old friend, Helen, hurried after me and took my hand. She whispered, "Beatrice, you did the right thing." They needed to be exposed. I nodded lightly and said nothing more. Back in the car, I settled into the back seat and looked through the window. In a final glimpse, I saw Michael standing stunned in the lobby while Sabrina sobbed and shoved at people. The scene looked like a warped painting of wedded bliss. I closed my eyes and told myself that today's storm was only the beginning. I knew the aftershocks would keep coming. They would come to me begging or raging. But I was ready now. I wasn't the soft mother anymore. I was Beatrice Langford, and I'd decided to step out of the spiral of lies. The next morning I woke as pale sunlight slipped through my bedroom curtains. No more wedding clamor, no more of Michael's breathless pleading or Sabrina's furious wailing. Only quiet, and inside me, a resolve clearer than ever. I brewed a pot of coffee and poured it into my favorite white china mug with the rose print. As the warm scent filled the kitchen, I sat down and pulled out an old notebook. I opened to the first page, crammed with financial plans and figures I once treated as proof of a lifetime of sacrifice for family. But today, I took a red pen and crossed out every line, every allocation for Michael. In that moment, I realized that money, no matter how much, turns into a weapon against you when you give it to the wrong person. I had raised a dependent man who never learned to stand on his own, and now he was willing to sell out his own mother for a fake freedom. That painful truth snapped me awake, and I knew I had to act before it was too late. I called my trusted attorney, Richard Cole, who'd stood with me through real estate deals for 2 decades. His warm, deep voice carried a hint of surprise at a Sunday morning call. "Good morning, Mrs. Beatrice. I thought you'd be resting after the wedding yesterday." I gave a thin smile and said, "Yes, Richard. Yesterday was memorable, to say the least, and because of it, I want to see you today. We need to change the entire will and the transfer documents. No delays." He was quiet for a few seconds, then answered firmly, "I'll head to the office now. Can you meet me at 10 o'clock? I nodded, feeling light as if a stone had been lifted off my chest. Richard's law office sits in a red brick building downtown, about a 15-minute drive from my house. When I walked in, he was already seated, silver frames slipping down his nose, a thick file set neatly on the desk. He looked at me with sympathetic eyes. "I've heard bits about the ceremony. Sounds like you faced a major shock." I let out a long breath, then gave him a brief rundown. The shaved head, the nasty note, Michael's phone call to his lover, Sabrina's venom in the bridal room. Richard listened without interrupting, only nodding now and then. When I finished, he closed the file, face grave. "I understand. And you were right to call me. First order of business is the will. Michael will no longer be an heir. Do you want to leave anything to any other family member?" I shook my head. "No. I want everything moved to a charity fund, supporting widows and single mothers starting businesses. They truly know the value of money and they need it to rebuild." Richard jotted notes quickly, then asked, "What about the trust you set up for Michael?" I sat up straight, voice firm. "Terminate it. I want to shut off every pipeline. Not a single dollar goes to him or Sabrina." Over the next few hours, we combed through every contract and clause. I signed the new pages, feeling like I was closing an old door and opening a brighter one. Each stroke of the pen was a cut, severing Michael's dependence on me. When I signed the last document, I leaned back and took a deep breath. I felt released, as if my blood finally flowed freely again after years of being pinned down. Richard gave me a small smile. "I know this wasn't easy, but sometimes freedom comes from drawing a hard line. Mrs. Beatrice, you just did the most important thing for the rest of your life." I nodded, gratitude filling me. Back home, I walked into the living room and looked around at the paintings on the walls and the family photos from when Michael was little. For years, I kept them as proof of motherhood and sacrifice. But now I understood. Keeping them out didn't matter anymore. I wasn't erasing memories, but I wouldn't let them bind me either. I opened the safe, took out savings books and company share documents, and filed them neatly into a separate cabinet. I labeled it clearly, Freedom Fund. 3 simple words with the weight of a vow. From now on, money would no longer be the chain tying me to people who don't deserve it. It would be a tool for me and for those who truly need help. That evening I sat on the porch, listening to waves thud in the distance. A glass of red wine glowed on the table. I looked up at a sky full of stars and felt the cool breeze pass over my scalp, where a fine layer of new hair was beginning to grow. I smiled. My reflection in the glass door no longer hurt. It felt like a symbol of a beginning. My phone rang nonstop. Michael, Sabrina, unknown numbers I guessed were relatives. I silenced it and let the screen light and go dark. My decision was made. From now on, I am no one's bank. A calm rose inside me. I knew there were more storms ahead. Michael wouldn't let go easily. Sabrina would try to maneuver. But this time, I was ready. I had the law on my side, evidence in my hand, and most of all, a new faith in myself. I took a sip of wine and whispered, "Freedom finally found me." Those first days after rewriting the will, I lived in a strange quiet. The big house, once echoing with Michael's footsteps or Sabrina's shrill laugh, held only the ticking clock and the wind slipping through the window. Instead of emptiness, I felt a rare peace. I began to rearrange my life. Financial files went into cabinets, long dusty family photos came down from the shelves. I didn't throw them out. I packed them carefully into a large box and stored it deep in the closet. I needed new space for myself. All this time, I'd been the manager, the sacrificer, the protector. I had never truly lived for me. One morning, I walked past a small shop near the beach. A simple wooden sign hung on the clear glass door. Landscape painting classes for all ages. I stood there, peering in, seeing a few women gathered around a long table, brushes in hand, focused on small canvases. Light streamed through the skylight, falling over faces lined with years but bright with excitement. My heart stirred. I remembered my dream at 18 to learn to paint, buried by the weight of making a living. That afternoon I went back and signed up. The teacher's name was Marianne, a woman about my age, hair loose, voice warm and calm. She smiled when I fumbled with the brush. "No grades here, just joy. Let your hand lead your heart." The first lesson was seascapes. I looked out the window at whitecaps breaking on the sand. I laid my first stroke on the canvas, shy as if learning to write again. Then, patches of blue and silvery gray began to appear, the smell of oil paint, the feel of bristles sliding across rough fabric. It all made me feel like a child discovering the world. When I finished my first painting, awkward as it was, my eyes stung with tears. I had given myself permission to live and breathe in a new way. From then on, I went every week. I got to know other women, most of whom had weathered loss. Some were widows, some estranged from their children, others fighting illness. We sat side by side, painting and talking, like threads of different colors weaving a new cloth. I didn't feel alone anymore. Outside of class, I often carried a folding chair to the beach near my house. In the mornings, the sea was glassy blue. In the afternoons, sunlight tipped the waves and turned the water into countless shards of sparkling glass. I sat for hours, filling page after page, letting the salty wind play in my hair. The ocean never bored me, every day a new face, every moment a different shade. Like me relearning myself, changing day by day. In class, I grew especially close to a man named Samuel. He was a few years older than me, salt and pepper hair, tall and lean. He had been a structural engineer, retired early after his wife died of cancer. He chose painting to fill the emptiness. I remember the first time we sat together. He tilted his head and smiled. "I'm not good at painting, but I'm great at ruining a canvas. That's why I sit near someone who can inspire me." I laughed. That simple line eased my heart. From then on, we traded tips on color and mixing paint. One day I smeared a corner of my canvas by accident. Samuel leaned over. "Don't worry. Mistakes can become the focal point. My life is proof." We laughed, and in that laughter I realized it had been a long time since my heart felt that light. After class, Samuel often walked with me to the beach. We talked about the past, our children, and lonely days. He didn't pry or judge. He just listened with quiet respect. Once, I blurted out the story of Michael and Sabrina, the hurt I'd just been through. I worried he'd be shocked or pity me, but Samuel only nodded. "I get it. Losing trust in family can hurt more than losing money, but you're standing here, that means you chose to move forward. That's worth more than any amount of money." My throat tightened. No flowery comfort, just one short sentence, and I felt seen. Little by little, I found myself again. I no longer woke up, worried about what my son needed or what my daughter-in-law would criticize. I woke to choose a new palette, to walk on the sand, to hear Samuel talk about a project he once designed. I realized life after 65 isn't an ending, it can be a beginning. One evening, as a fiery sunset spread across the horizon, I set my brush down and looked at the painting I'd just finished. In it, the sea stretched wide, the sky glowed, and in the right corner I painted a woman standing tall, silver hair blowing in the wind. That was me, but not the fragile, dependent Beatrice. It was the new Beatrice, free, at ease, smiling at her own reflection. I understood then. Art didn't just pull me out of the dark, it gave me a mirror for my soul. With the ocean, the colors, and a friend who knew how to listen, I'd begun the journey back to myself. A journey I once never dared to imagine. One early fall afternoon, coming home from class with beach sand still clinging to my shoes, I saw a familiar car by my gate, Michael's. The door was cracked open and he was in the driver's seat, looking defeated, a far cry from the polished groom he once was. I sighed, my hand pausing on the latch. I knew this moment would come sooner or later, our final confrontation. When Michael saw me, he hurried out. His eyes were hollow, dark circles stark on his face. He came closer, voice shaking. "Mom, please let me talk to you, just once." I stayed quiet, opened the gate, and motioned him into the living room. The room glowed with late afternoon light, my seascapes on the walls. Michael sat on the sofa, hands clenched together, trembling. I sat across from him, a careful distance between us, my gaze steady. He stared at the floor. "I've lost everything, Mom. Sabrina left. The company I invested in went under. Friends disappeared. I have nothing left." I listened, a mix of pity, anger, and exhaustion rising in me. I asked, calm but clear, "So what are you here to ask me for today?" Michael looked up, eyes red. "Not money. I know you won't give it anymore. I want your forgiveness. I can't sleep, Mom. Your voice from that night keeps echoing in my head. I feel awful." I studied his face for a few seconds, lines of fatigue, eyes that once shone with pride now dulled. I said slowly, "Michael, forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was. Forgiveness is for my peace, not so you can lean on me and depend on me again." He broke down crying, the heavy, sad sound of a grown man. He dropped to his knees and took my hand. "Mom, I'm sorry. I don't know why I was so blind. I'll change. I'll start over, if you'll give me a chance to stand by you." I pulled my hand back, gentle but firm. I shook my head. "Michael, you're my son. That will never change. But the bond of money, of expectations, of unconditional sacrifice that's broken. I'm not your life raft anymore. If you want to start over, you have to stand up on your own." His eyes drifted, like a man lost in a dark night without a path. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the distant sea. The horizon burned red, the whitecaps rolled in. I turned back, voice resolute. "You know, I found myself again. Painting, the ocean, and new friends showed me I can live fully without anyone's approval or fake gratitude. You need to learn that for yourself." Michael stood, eyes wet, nodding weakly. He took a few steps toward the door, then stopped. "So, is this the last time I can see you?" I stepped closer, set my hand on his shoulder, light but steady. "No, I'm still your mother. But from now on, I open this door only when you come as a man who takes responsibility, not as a child who makes demands. The day you do that, you'll find I'm still here." He bit his lip, said nothing more, and left quietly. The door clicked shut, leaving me in the still room, honeyed sunlight spilling across the wall. I sat down and poured myself a cup of tea. My heart didn't feel completely light, but something was unmistakable. An invisible cord had been cut. I was no longer bound by the guilt of a mother's duty that chained me for years. Michael would answer for what he had done. Outside the window, the scarlet sea faded into deep purple. I suddenly remembered the painting I finished yesterday, a woman standing tall against rough waves, unbroken. I smiled. That woman is me, and today I finally lived up to her. I lifted the teacup, letting the scent of jasmine drift through the air, and told myself, I've faced it, I've cut it off, and I'm free. Spring came late that year, and maybe that's why it was so stunning. Along the road to the beach, rows of cherry trees burst open in the breeze, pale pink petals falling softly, dusting shoulders and footsteps. I strolled under the branches, brushing each petal with my fingertips, feeling my heart warm, as if the whole universe were whispering, "It's time to begin again." The seaside house looked completely different now. Beige walls were dotted with my own paintings, from sunset seas to lavender fields I imagined. Each piece was a shard of my soul, a marker on the path where I learned to love myself. I once thought hair, a dress, or a set of jewelry measured my worth. Now I understand. True worth is in daring to rise from the ashes and bloom at an age no one expects. In the mornings, I brew a pot of jasmine tea and open the window so the salty air rolls in. I sit at the easel and lay down brighter colors than before. No longer only heavy grays, my canvases glow with yellow, pink, and sea green. It's like I'm painting myself in a late bloom season, flowers not meant for 20-somethings, but for a seasoned heart that still stirs and still dreams. Samuel, my classmate from painting, still drops by. Some days he brings a bunch of blazing red tulips, sets them on the table, and says, half joking, half earnest, "Late blooming flowers are still flowers, Beatrice." And they often hold their color longer. I smile, neither denying nor confirming, just letting joy slip into each moment. We sit on the porch, watch the ocean, sip coffee. He talks about structures he once designed. I talk about the years I juggled ledgers and sleepless nights. Once, he looked at me for a long time and said, "You know, I've never seen anyone as brave as you. Most people stay silent and endure. You chose to walk away." His words quieted something deep inside me. I didn't answer right. Away, just turned to the sea, where whitecaps kept rolling in like steady heartbeats. One afternoon, our class held a small-town exhibit. I brought a few of my pieces, both nervous and self-conscious. But when I saw them hanging beside others, I realized they held their own. A visitor lingered before Woman in the Sea and asked, "Who painted this? I'd like to buy it." I shook my head with a gentle smile. "I'm sorry, this one isn't for sale. It's a personal reminder." He nodded, understanding. The story made its way around class. Marianne, our teacher, hugged me and whispered, "Beatrice, you've found your season to bloom." That night, back home, I opened the windows to the ocean breeze. Moonlight laid a silver band across the water, mirroring the starry sky. I stood there a long time, feeling a peace I'd never tasted before. No more resentment, no more sting of betrayal, just a steady faith that life, even late, can still blossom. My phone buzzed on the table, a message from Michael. The same long paragraphs, the same pleading tone, but this time my hand didn't shake to delete them. I left them alone, calm. I'd said everything in our final face-to-face. I didn't owe more explanations, and those bonds no longer held me. I set down my tea, picked up my brush, and painted a white flower opening in the night against a deep violet sky. A late bloom, but whole, and as I laid the final strokes, I knew I was painting my own heart, a heart scarred by hurt, yet patient enough to wait for its full bloom. I whispered, as if to myself, "My season has come late, but beautiful." I never imagined that at my age I could live an entirely different life. A life not revolving around checks, strained family dinners, or being crushed by responsibility. Now, Every morning I wake to watch the dawn pink the sea, to lift my brush and add another patch of color to my painting. I still remember the day I dared to speak the truth at the wedding. It was the turning point of my life. For years I let silence chain me, let fear hold me down. But one brave moment set me free. Since then I've understood, truth can hurt and cost you, but it's the only road to freedom. Michael. He still texts sometimes, occasionally calls. I don't avoid him, but I don't chase him either. I answer briefly, calmly. I show him that a mother's love remains, but reliance and exploitation do not. My son must learn to be a man, take responsibility, and build his own life. That's the only gift I can leave him, and it's worth more than $22 million. As for Sabrina, she vanished from town after the wrecked wedding. I heard she moved to another state, living quietly. I'm neither angry nor pleased. I understand the harshest punishment didn't come from me, it came from the truth in daylight. Once the mask falls, no one believes the pretty words. That's the heaviest sentence. Some afternoons I sit on the porch and watch the whitecaps, thinking how far I've come. From a widow scraping to save every dollar for my child, to a mother betrayed by her son, to the woman who stood up and exposed it all. I lost plenty, but I found myself. And in the end, I'm grateful even for the losses. They cleared a path to my real life. I'm not young, but I have my late bloom. My first paintings now hang in a small seaside shop. Not to make money, but to prove that age can't cage a creative spirit. Samuel drops by sometimes with a book or a new tube of paint, and we sit talking under the sunset. I don't call it late love, just companionship, and that, for me, is enough. If there's anything I want to tell those listening, it's this. Never think it's too late to start over. Truth may make you tremble, but once you speak it, your steps feel lighter. Don't wait for someone to hand you your worth. You can find it in your own hands, in your hobbies, in the small things your heart points to. I know many of you may be living with the fears I carried. Fear of losing affection, of being abandoned, of a family breaking if you stop sacrificing. But remember, real love is never built on taking advantage. Sometimes cutting a toxic tie is the only way to save yourself. And now, as I close my story, I want to say thank you. Thank you for staying, for walking with me through the dark, through the tremors, the tears, and the final smiles. Your presence, dear audience, proves that the story of an ordinary woman like me can still touch another heart. If you've known betrayal, dismissal, or being used, I hope you find a spark here to stand up. And if your days are peaceful, cherish them. They are priceless. I'll end with a warm ask. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Every story and experience deserves to be heard. If this journey meant something to you, tap like so I know I'm not speaking into the void. And if you'd like to keep walking together, subscribe so we can meet again in other stories, ones about truth, courage, and the strength of our later years. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for giving me your precious time. We may not know each other in real life, but in this moment, our hearts touched, and to me, that is a kind of miracle.